My fiancée betrayed me with my younger brother at our engagement party, but when my parents defended the affair and blamed me, I cut contact with my entire family, and now they're begging for forgiveness while I built a life they never expected. I'm 29 years old. I work in finance, and what happened 2.5 years ago literally destroyed what I thought was my family. And the thing is, I need to tell this because a few months ago I got a call I never expected to get, and I'm still processing everything that happened after. I guess I should start from the beginning. When things still seemed normal, when I thought I had everything under control and my life was going exactly where it should go. Jennifer and I had been together for 7 years. Okay? 7 years. We met in college. She was studying psychology, and I was studying business administration. And from the beginning, everything flowed in a way that I thought was special. You know, one of those relationships where you don't have to force anything because it just works. We graduated together, got decent jobs, moved into a small but nice apartment, and I honestly thought she was the person I was going to spend the rest of my life with. My brother Lucas, who's 3 years younger than me, was always part of our lives too. He came over often. The three of us would go out sometimes, and I never, and when I say never, I mean never, thought anything weird was going on. Lucas was studying civil engineering at the time. He was in his last year of college, and I always saw him as my younger brother, like the kid you had to take care of and support. The day I proposed to Jennifer was perfect, or at least that's what I thought at the time. Looking back, I should have seen the signs, but I was so excited that I didn't pay attention to anything else. It was a Saturday in May, 2.5 years ago, and I had been planning everything for weeks. I took her to this Italian restaurant she loved, the same place where we had our first official date as a couple. And after dinner, I took her to the park where we used to walk on Sundays. There, I got down on one knee, pulled out the ring I had bought with my savings. An engagement ring with a diamond that wasn't huge, but it was nice and had cost me like 3 months' salary. And I asked her if she wanted to marry me. She said yes. Cried. I cried. It was that whole perfect scene you see in movies, you know? What came next was what ended everything. We decided to have an engagement party at our house like 2 weeks after the proposal. Nothing too big, just close family and close friends, like 40 people max. My parents were there, super happy, as far as I could tell. Jennifer's parents also came from their city, which was like 3 hours away, and obviously Lucas was invited. I remember that day I felt on cloud 9. I literally thought I was the luckiest man in the world. We had music, food, decorations, everything was perfect. Jennifer looked beautiful in a blue dress she had bought especially for the occasion, and I couldn't stop introducing her to everyone as my future wife. The thing is that around 9 at night, when the party had been going for like 3 hours, I realized I hadn't seen Jennifer in a while. I hadn't seen Lucas either. At first I didn't think much of it. I thought Jennifer would be in the bathroom or talking to someone inside, and that Lucas would be smoking outside or something, because he smoked occasionally, even though I always told him to quit that habit. But like 15 more minutes passed, and neither of them showed up, and I started to feel something weird in my stomach. I don't know, like a feeling that something wasn't right. I decided to go look for them. And I went out to the backyard of the house, because there were fewer people there, and I thought maybe they were there. And I saw them. I saw them kissing by the tree we had in the back of the yard, kind of hidden, but not so much that I couldn't see them. It wasn't a friendly kiss or an accidental kiss. It was a real kiss, with Lucas's hands on Jennifer's waist and her hands on his neck, and I just stood there, unable to move, for what seemed like an eternity, but was probably only a few seconds. I felt like someone had punched me in the chest and I couldn't breathe properly, and all I could think was, this can't be happening. This isn't real. But it was real. Very real. Because when I finally managed to move and approach them, they separated quickly when they heard me. And Jennifer's face, honestly, I'll never forget that face. It wasn't a face of surprise or guilt. It was more like relief, like she had finally been caught and didn't have to keep pretending anymore. I didn't scream. I didn't explode right there. I basically couldn't speak. I just stared at them. First at Jennifer and then at Lucas. And Lucas had a red face and couldn't look me in the eyes, and Jennifer just stood there like she was waiting for me to say something. I finally managed to say something like, "What the hell is going on here?" but with a super low and shaky voice, and Jennifer took a deep breath and told me, "We need to talk inside." Just like that, cold, as if we had just had a normal disagreement about which movie to watch. I didn't understand anything. My brain literally wasn't processing what I had just seen. We went into the house. I mean, the three of us went in because Lucas followed us even though I would have preferred he leave. And I asked my best friend to please get everyone out of the house because I needed privacy. He realized something serious was happening from my face and started getting people to leave with some excuse he made up right there. When we were finally alone in the living room, Jennifer, Lucas, and me, she was the one who spoke first. She told me she had to be honest with me, that she had been feeling confused about her feelings for several months, that she had developed an emotional connection with Lucas that she didn't expect, and that after thinking about it a lot, she had realized that what she felt for him was stronger than what she felt for me. Like that, with those words, as if she were reading a script or something. I still couldn't process anything. I just kept staring at her while she kept talking, saying that I was very controlling, that I never let her make her own decisions, that the relationship with Lucas was different because he understood her in a way I never could. And I was thinking, controlling? Me? When have I been controlling? If I've literally given her all the space in the world and supported her in everything she's wanted to do. Lucas finally spoke and said he was very sorry, that it was never his intention for this to happen, but that the feelings were real and they couldn't ignore them. He said that, "The feelings are real," as if that justified anything. I asked him how long this had been going on, and Jennifer told me they had started getting emotionally close like 6 months ago, and that the first kiss had been 2 months ago, which means 1 month before I proposed. I was in total shock. I couldn't believe she had agreed to marry me knowing she was involved with my younger brother. I yelled that at her. I said then, "Why the hell did you say yes when I proposed to you?" And she answered that she thought her feelings for Lucas were going to disappear. That she wanted them to disappear because she didn't want to hurt me, but that she realized she couldn't keep lying to herself. I don't know how long we were there talking, or rather them talking and me trying to understand what was happening with my life. At some point, I told them both to leave, that I needed to be alone, and Jennifer took off the engagement ring and left it on the coffee table like it was nothing, as if those 7 years together meant absolutely nothing. Lucas tried to approach me before leaving, like to hug me or I don't know what, but I backed away and told him not to even think about touching me, and he left with his head down. I was left alone in that house, full of engagement party decorations, with dirty plates and glasses everywhere, and I just sat on the living room floor and stayed there. I don't know how many hours. Not crying, not screaming, just feeling a horrible emptiness in my chest. What came after was almost worse than the betrayal itself. Honestly, I thought that at least my parents were going to be on my side, that they were going to understand what Jennifer and Lucas had done to me. But I was completely wrong when I told them what had happened the next day, because obviously they found out that the party had ended abruptly and wanted to know what had happened. Their reaction was something I never imagined. My mother told me I should reflect on my behavior, that if Jennifer had fallen in love with Lucas, it must be for a reason, that maybe I hadn't been the boyfriend she needed. My father, who was always quieter, said that these things happen, that the heart can't be controlled, and that I should be mature and accept the situation. Can you believe it? My own parents basically justifying that my fiancé cheated on me with my brother on the day of our engagement party. I tried to explain today to Dudis, them how I felt. I told them I was devastated, that I didn't understand how they could not be furious with Lucas, and my mother responded that I had always been very dramatic, that I tended to make things bigger than they were. Dramatic, me, for being devastated after my entire life had fallen apart. My father added that Lucas was very sorry, that he had gone to talk to them and was suffering a lot because of the situation, and that I should try to understand that love is complicated. They were basically asking me to forgive and forget as if nothing had happened. The following weeks were hell. Jennifer and I were still living together, so I had to find a new place to move to quickly. She stayed in the apartment because technically it was in both our names, but she said she could pay my part until we found someone to take over the lease. And I agreed, just because I wanted to get out of there as fast as possible. My parents kept calling me to tell me I was overreacting, that I should talk to Lucas and work things out. That family was the most important thing. In one of those calls, My mother told me that I had always been very selfish and that I only thought about my own feelings, and something broke inside me at that moment. I told her that if for them I was the problem in this situation, then it was better if we didn't talk anymore. And I hung up the phone. I made the decision to cut contact with all of them. With my parents, with Lucas, obviously with Jennifer too, although we didn't have anything to talk about anyway. It was hard. I'm not going to lie, because I never thought I would reach a point where I had to distance myself from my family. But every time I talked to them, I felt worse, more guilty about something I hadn't done, more like I was the villain of the story. My friends, on the other hand, were incredible. They supported me completely. They told me that what Jennifer and Lucas had done was unforgivable, that my parents were completely wrong in their private way of handling the situation, that helped me understand that I wasn't crazy, that my feelings were valid, and that I had every right to be furious and hurt. I moved to a smaller apartment like half an hour from where I lived before. I started therapy because I needed to process everything that had happened, and I basically focused on rebuilding my life from scratch. I blocked my parents' and Lucas's numbers, blocked all their social media, and decided I was going to move forward without them. It was weird at first, like really weird, because I was used to talking to my parents at least 2 or 3 times a week, but over time it got easier. The work helped too. I threw myself into a big project we had at the office, and that kept my mind busy during the day. Like 6 months after the engagement party disaster, I found out through a mutual friend that Lucas and Jennifer had gotten married. It was a private ceremony, very small, just immediate family and some close friends. My parents were obviously there, and according to what this friend told me, they were happy and celebrating as if nothing had happened. That news hurt. I'm not going to lie. But by that point, I was already in a place mentally where I could process it without completely falling apart. My therapist helped me a lot to understand that their lives were no longer my problem, that I had to focus on my own path and my own healing. So, I basically shrugged and moved on with my life. 2 full years passed without me talking to any of them. 2 years in which I completely remade my life. I got a promotion at work that I had been pursuing since before all the drama. I moved to a better apartment. I started dating some people, although nothing serious. I traveled a bit. I picked up hobbies I had set aside. Honestly, after all the initial pain, I started to feel good. Like really good. I had a calm life, without family drama, without betrayals, without having to deal with parents who made me feel like I was the problem. Jennifer's parents contacted me once during that time, like a year after everything, to apologize for what their daughter had done. They were very kind and told me they didn't approve of the situation and they were very sorry about how things ended. I thanked them and told them they didn't have to apologize for her actions, but that I appreciated the gesture. And then, like 9 months ago, I got a call that changed everything again. It was at night, like 11 at night on a Tuesday, and my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. Normally, I don't answer calls from unknown numbers, but something made me answer that time. I don't know why. It was my mother. Her voice sounded desperate, shaky, and the first thing she said was, "William, please don't hang up. It's an emergency." My first instinct was to hang up anyway, because after 2 years without talking, I wasn't interested in knowing what kind of emergency they could have. But something in her tone stopped me. I asked her what was wrong, and she started crying, like crying hard. And between sobs, she told me that Lucas and Jennifer had had a very serious car accident, that a truck had crossed into their lane on the highway when they were coming back from a weekend trip, and that they were both in a coma in the hospital. I was silent, processing what I had just heard. I didn't know what to feel, honestly. On one hand, I was in shock because obviously it was terrible news, but on the other hand, I didn't feel that immediate anguish that I guess you should feel when you're told your brother is in a coma. It was more like a feeling of, this is sad, but it's not my problem, you know what I mean? I asked my mother why she was calling me after 2 years, what she expected me to do with that information, and she told me they needed my help, that the situation was very complicated and that I was part of the family. I told her I hadn't been part of the family for 2 years by their decision, not mine, and that I was very sorry about Lucas and Jennifer, but that I had nothing to do there. She kept crying and asked me to at least go to the hospital to see them, to think of Lucas as my brother regardless of what had happened. I told her I would think about it and hung up. I didn't go to the hospital. I stayed in my apartment that night thinking about everything that had happened, about how they had treated me after the betrayal, about how they had justified everything and made me feel like I was the problem. And I came to the conclusion that I didn't owe them anything, that my mental health and my peace were more important than fulfilling some invented family obligation. My friends supported me in that decision when I told them what had happened. They told me that no one would expect me to drop everything, to go support people who had turned their backs on me when I needed them most. But my mother didn't give up. She kept calling me for the next 2 weeks from different numbers because I blocked each. One she used, leaving me desperate voicemails, sending me long texts about how the situation was at the hospital. In one of those messages, she told me something that left me cold. Lucas and Jennifer had a baby, a 2-month-old boy who had been at my parents' house when the accident happened, and that now my parents were taking care of him, but didn't know what was going to happen if Lucas and Jennifer didn't recover. They were asking me, basically, to consider helping raise that child, the son of the woman who betrayed me and my brother who stabbed me in the back. I couldn't believe it. The audacity of asking me that after everything was incredible. I ignored all the messages and calls for another week, but they wouldn't stop. Finally, on a Saturday morning, they knocked on my apartment door. It was my father and my mother. They had shown up without warning, and when I opened the door, they were standing there with tired and desperate faces. My mother started talking immediately, telling me we needed to talk about the situation, that the baby needed a family, that they were older and couldn't take care of a newborn long-term by themselves. My father, who almost never raised his voice, told me it was my responsibility as an uncle to help, that the baby wasn't to blame for anything that had happened between us. I told them no, absolutely not. I explained to them that I had rebuilt my life for 2 years, that I was okay for the first time in a long time, and that I wasn't going to let myself be dragged back into that situation. My mother started crying again and told me, how could I be so cruel? How could I turn my back on an innocent baby? And I responded that they had turned their backs on me when I needed them most, that they had called me dramatic and selfish when I was devastated, and that now they had no right to ask me for anything. My father tried the typical blood is thicker than water thing, but I had heard that speech before, and it didn't work on me. I asked them to leave my apartment and told them that, if Lucas and Jennifer recovered, they could take care of their son, and if they didn't recover, then other options would have to be found, but that I wasn't going to be part of that equation. They left upset, obviously, and my mother yelled something at me about how I was going to regret this decision as they went down the stairs. I closed the door and sat on the couch feeling a weird mix of emotions. Part of me felt bad, because obviously an innocent baby was in the middle of this whole horrible situation, but the bigger part of me knew I had made the right decision. It wasn't my responsibility to clean up other people's mess, especially people who had treated me so badly. My therapist confirmed later that I had set healthy boundaries and that I shouldn't feel guilty about prioritizing my well-being. The next few weeks were weird. I kept getting updates I didn't ask for from my mother about Lucas and Jennifer's condition at the hospital. Apparently, they started showing signs of improvement after like 2 weeks in a coma. They started responding to stimuli, and the doctors were optimistic about their recovery. Every time I got one of those messages, I read it but didn't respond. I just read it and went on with my day. A very small part of me was glad they were recovering, not because I missed them or wanted to have a relationship with them, but simply because I didn't want them to die, you know? I didn't wish death on them despite everything, but I also didn't want them to be part of my life. And then I did something that I know was strange, but that I felt I needed to do. I went to the hospital one afternoon before Lucas and Jennifer fully woke up and asked to see my nephew. The nurses let me see him through the glass in the neonatology area where they had him under preventive observation. He was a small baby, obviously, with his eyes closed and everything connected to monitors. I stood there looking at him for a few minutes, and I felt a deep sadness about the whole situation, about that baby who had been born in the middle of so much drama and pain. But I also felt clarity. I felt like I needed that moment of closure, of seeing with my own eyes that the baby existed and was okay, but also of confirming that my decision to stay away was the right one. I didn't stay long at the hospital, maybe 20 minutes total. Before leaving, I asked about Lucas and Jennifer's condition, and they told me they were probably going to wake up in the next few days. I thanked the nurses and left, and on the way home I felt lighter than I had felt in weeks. I had closed that chapter definitively, or at least that's what I thought. Lucas and Jennifer recovered completely after like another month in the hospital. According to what I found out later, they had to do physical rehabilitation because they were immobile for a long time, but there was no serious permanent damage. The baby was with my parents all that time, and then went back with them when they got out of the hospital, and life just continued. I went on with my routine, with my work, with my friends, and they went on with theirs in their world separate from mine. What I didn't expect was that like 6 months after they woke up, I got a text message from Lucas. It was long, like a huge paragraph where he apologized for everything, where he said he had had a lot of time to think while he was in the hospital recovering, and that he realized the enormous damage he had caused me. He said he didn't expect me to forgive him, that he understood perfectly why I had cut contact, but that he needed me to know that he was truly sorry, that he lived with that guilt every day. Jennifer sent me a similar message that same day, also apologizing, saying that what she did was wrong regardless of her feelings, and that she understood if I never wanted to talk to her again. I read the messages several times. I didn't feel rage like I would have. I felt 2 years ago. I also didn't feel that sharp pain from the beginning. It was more like a cold acceptance that those apologies didn't change anything that had happened, but that it was okay that they finally acknowledged the damage they caused. I responded to both of them something short and simple. I told them I accepted their apologies, that I was glad they had recovered from the accident, but that I wasn't interested in having a relationship with either of them. I wished them the best with their son and their life together, and asked them to respect my decision to stay away. They both responded that they understood and respected my position. And that's where it all ended. My parents tried to contact me a couple more times after that. I think with the hope that Lucas and Jennifer's apologies would soften me or something, but I maintained my position. I didn't respond to their calls or messages. The truth is, I had already made peace with the situation in my head. I didn't hate them. I didn't really miss them either. They simply existed on a different plane from mine, and that was okay. Like 3 months ago, I met someone, a woman who works in marketing. I met her at a networking event organized by my company, and we've been dating since then. It's something serious, or at least it's heading that way, and for the first time in a long time, I feel like I can open up emotionally with someone without fear of being betrayed. I told her the whole story about Jennifer and Lucas on our 3rd date because I felt I needed to be honest about my past before things moved forward more, and she was incredibly understanding. She told me what they had done to me was horrible, that it made complete sense that I had cut contact with my family, and that she admired that I had prioritized my mental health over social expectations of what family means. Yesterday, we were having coffee at my apartment, and she asked me if I ever thought about reconnecting with my parents or with Lucas. I told her honestly no, that my life is good now, that I have good friends, a job I like, and a peace of mind I didn't have when they were part of my life. She asked me if I wasn't worried about regretting it later, when my parents are older, or something like that, and I told her that maybe I'll regret it. I don't know. But that for now, this is the right decision for me, and it's the one that allows me to be happy. And I think that's what's most important, right? After everything that happened, after the betrayal, the pain, feeling abandoned by the people who were supposed to support me unconditionally, I finally found a way to be okay. It wasn't easy, honestly. And there were many days during those first 2 years where I thought I was never going to recover from the blow. But I did. I built a new life without them, and it's a good life. It's not perfect, but it's mine, and no one can take it away from me or destroy it because I have control over who's in it and who's not. Sometimes I wonder how Lucas and Jennifer are doing now, what their life with the baby is like, if they're happy together, or if all that drama was worth it for them. But they're fleeting thoughts, like things that go through my head from time to time but don't keep me up at night. I guess a part of me will always be curious about how it all ended, but not curious enough to break the boundaries I set 2.5 years ago. Those boundaries saved me. They gave me the space I needed to heal and rebuild myself, and I don't plan to tear them down now. The whole story is long and complicated, with a bunch of small details I still remember vividly, like the exact face Jennifer made when I caught her kissing Lucas, or the condescending tone of my mother when she called me dramatic, or the feeling of absolute emptiness I felt when I was left alone in that house full of party decorations. But I think the most important part of all this isn't what they did to me, but how I decided to respond. I could have forgiven and forgotten like my parents wanted. I could have kept the family together at the cost of my own happiness and dignity, but I chose not to. I chose to prioritize myself. I chose to say, this isn't right, and I don't have to accept it. And that decision changed my life for the better. I don't know what will happen in the future. Maybe in 10 or 20 years things will look different. Maybe my parents will try to contact me again when they're much older. Maybe Lucas will want his son to know his uncle someday. I have no idea how I would handle those situations if they happen, but for now I'm focused on the present, on building something good with this new person I met, on continuing to advance in my career, on maintaining the friendships that supported me when I needed it most. That's enough for me right now, and I think it's all I can really ask for. At the end of the day, I learned that family isn't just blood, that relationships have to be reciprocal and healthy, and that it's okay to distance yourself from people who hurt you, no matter what title they have in your life. And that lesson cost me a lot to learn. It hurt me in ways I didn't know it was possible to feel pain. But now that I'm on the other side, I can say it was worth it. I'm a different person from who I was 2.5 years ago. Stronger, more confident in my boundaries, less willing to accept crumbs of respect from people who should give me much more than that. And I guess that's all I have to say about this situation. It's a long and complicated story that I'll probably never completely forget, but that no longer defines me or controls me. It's part of my past, a painful and ugly part, but just a part. The rest of my story is yet to be written, and this time I'm the only one holding the pen.